witness. Remember, Investigator Warren is on the stand. Mr. Kingston is still directly examining. Go ahead, sir.
Officer Warren, the bus was essentially on its side in this tree, correct?
That's correct. Yes,
And
sir.
at some point, I think, the bus was towed away from the scene. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. For a post-crash inspection?
Yes, sir.
All
That's
right.
exactly what it's totally for.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness.
You may, sir.
I'll show you 4 photographs, sir, and see if you can recognize those.
Yes, sir.
Those from the scene on that particular day in Tally Road?
3 of them are from the morning after, and the one is that afternoon.
That afternoon. All right. Your Honor, I'd like to mark the next 4 photographs.
Defense has seen those. Is that objection? Are there 4 exhibits?
Yes.
Let those be marked without objection. It is exhibits 41 through 44.
And very briefly, sir, 44, I think was the one you said taken on that day. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
that's
sir. That was that afternoon.
Mr. Walker?
That is correct. He was sitting where I saw him near the house at 318 Tally, on a little ledge.
All right. And what's that appears to be in front of him on the ground?
Book back.
Okay. And what else?
The cell phone.
Cell phone?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then I'll go with 41, 42, and 43. Or the next day?
Yes, sir. That would be the next morning, because it wasn't until the morning when we actually when the record service was actually able to pull the bus away from the tree and get it upright on its wheels.
All right. And this will be looking at not the driver's side of the vehicle, correct?
But the passenger side,
Passenger side. All right.
during the time of the collision, was actually on. It was actually on its side.
All right. And then 42.
Yes, sir. Again, that morning, the following morning, after the wreckers were able to pull the bus away from the tree, and
You noted something earlier, I think, about the front of the bus that it impacted. You talked about the
right,
mailbox.
Yes, sir. Let me find my laser pointer. What I noticed was an indentation right through here. It's almost like at a 45-degree angle. The utility pole was originally standing straight up and down. When the bus was canted over, as is in that sideways yaw going off the roadway, when it first contacted that utility pole and then broke it in half, you can tell because the pole was going straight up and down, which means the bus would have had to have been over on its side or partially on its side. And you can see that 45-degree indentation on the face of the bus where the utility pole itself struck the face of the bus right there. So the bus was in the process of rolling over when it made contact with the utility pole, and got into the grass, and it completed its rollover event and slid into eventually the tree.
And then 43 is another, I guess, view of the bus, and it's right prior to being towed.
That's correct, yes, sir. And the extreme deformation along the roof line of the bus.
All right. The bus was equipped with cameras, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
3, is it 3 or 4?
There are actually, the video software looks like it was set up for 4 cameras. There are actually 3 physical cameras that are recording into that software.
It doesn't appear that it captures every moment of the trip. Is that true or not?
Yeah, there's a couple of places that seems like it skips just a little bit. That could be a software issue. I'm not familiar enough with that camera system other than to just guess.
But the videos you were able to obtain, it doesn't show the trip from point A to point B continuously through.
Some of the video cuts out.
Okay.
Most of the video that I was able to see, at least directly up to the crash, was complete, minus a few seconds. So it's like this, the side camera had some information and stopped. The rear-facing camera had more information and stopped, and vice versa.
Okay.
Not all the cameras. There was something going on. I don't know how much of it was related to the crash, where the cameras didn't run continuously from driving to the end of the crash.
All right. Now, you've determined two different yaw areas,
Yes, sir.
essentially what the kind of range of speed for both of the critical speed yaws. Is that
Yes, sir,
correct?
that's correct.
You've determined Mr. Walker was driving.
Yes, sir.
You determined at the end it's on its side and its path up until that point.
Yes, sir.
And we know the speed limit, we've seen photographs, is 30 miles an hour.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, at some point in your investigation, you became aware of a statement by a Miss Brogdon, or Michelle Brogdon.
Right, I didn't know who she was, but that was that afternoon of the crash. I wasn't directly aware of it other than when we interviewed one witness, I'm trying to remember her name. She was actually following the bus.
Yes.
And Investigator Mike Russ specifically asked her about a white bus or a white van. That's when I became first aware that there is a white vehicle that was mentioned by somebody. At that time of that afternoon, I didn't know who mentioned the white bus or what relevance it had.
But it was mentioned.
That's correct. That was the afternoon of, because it's still daylight, when we interviewed another lady that was actually following the bus.
And I believe the individual, do you recall, about the white vehicle sees it somewhere at the intersection of Talley and Sunset.
Okay.
Is that right?
I'm not personally aware of that, but that's
Okay.
that's likely.
All right. And in your reconstruction, have you done anything to figure in or determine if another vehicle could have been involved? And if I may back up a bit, you obviously noticed these yaw marks of the bus.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
You noticed something like the paint transfer from the mailbox to the bus.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
On the roadway, were you ever able to determine if another vehicle was involved in this particular incident?
No, sir. Because we were aware that there was another vehicle that was mentioned, and at the time I didn't know to what level it was involved or if there was any involvement. I considered it a single vehicle crash because it didn't make contact with any other vehicle, and I wasn't able to see how it influenced the bus in the crash sequence. But we did look for any other tire marks that could be attributed to a separate vehicle, and we did not locate any at that time.
All right. What about if you talked about earlier about the yellow race car and the red race car?
Right, paint transfer.
Yes. Did you, other than the mailbox, did you determine any other paint transfer on the bus?
No, we've thoroughly examined the bus inside and out, scanned it inside and out. We actually set the scanner multiple points inside the bus to get a good thorough view inside the bus, as well as scanning the outside of it. Extensive number of photographs all the way around the bus. The only paint transfer that I recall seeing was the dark colored mark, the black mark, on the passenger side rear of the bus, which had been when it would have contacted the mailbox. Also on the mailbox, we did see yellow paint transfer on the mailbox itself, which indicates to me that the mailbox and the bus made contact with each other to cause that paint transfer. I did not see any other signs of paint transfer from any other vehicles or other objects that I could determine.
And you mentioned a moment ago that in your opinion it was a single vehicle crash.
That's correct.
All right. And that why do you made the comment you don't think anyone else influenced the collision?
Or it didn't cause a collision.
What do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes another vehicle can contribute to a crash, but not be physically involved or actually make contact. I was made aware that, obviously the day of the crash, we had heard of a white vehicle or white van. On the video itself, there's actually two screenshots on the forward-facing camera where we can see a white vehicle just before the impact area. As the bus is going, based on the frame count, I was able to determine where the bus was when it passed a white vehicle. I know that there was a discussion with a witness when Investigator Cabot and I discussed this case. Investigator Sider and I discussed this case. There was discussion of a van from like a nursing home or some other type of van, full-size van. On the video screenshots, there's two screenshots of a white vehicle that's on the left side of the bus, where you would expect the bus is on the right side of the road. of the vehicles on the other side of the road where it's supposed to be. You can see a screenshot where you see a white vehicle. To my eye, it looked like it might have been like a subcompact or compact SUV or like a crossover type vehicle. It didn't appear to me to be like a full-size van, but it was, the screenshots are so quick, you know, it's kind of a blurry shot, so it's hard to tell what type of vehicle it was. There was a white vehicle that had passed by while the bus is going uphill, and it's coming downhill. I guess what the white vehicle would do for me as a reconstructionist looking back at this crash, it kind of helps explain why the tire marks are the way they are. Normally, when a vehicle is traveling at a high rate of speed, and I know this from canyon carving, riding motorcycles up in Steele's Gap, and some of these other places, performance riders or people that are riding fast will try to use as much of the roadway as they can. When I say much of the roadway as they can, that means borrowing some room from the other lane, oncoming traffic. You know, you take a chance when you do that, obviously. But that allows a person, if he's driving fast, to negotiate a curve at a higher speed than what the laws of physics would allow if he stayed within his lane. If he could borrow some room from the other lane by going into oncoming traffic, that would allow him to get through a curve at a little bit higher speed. The only thing that the white vehicle that was mentioned by a witness, and it was confirmed that there was a white vehicle passing the bus as it's going uphill, would be that a driver might observe it and realize he can't borrow from the other lane and can't use both lanes and has to maintain and force that vehicle to stay in its lane so he doesn't strike another vehicle head on, which would explain to me the tire marks and going, you know, as tight as he was and not using all of the roadway. He wasn't able to because there was a car coming.
Which tire marks are you talking about?
The first tire, yaw marks at the bottom of the hill.
If you could show us.
Down here, where's my button? Down here at the bottom of the hill is these first tire marks. If a driver's going too fast to negotiate that curve, he can get away with it at a higher speed if he borrows some of the oncoming traffic. However, down here, if he sees, and I know they passed right in this area based on the frame count on the video, they passed somewhere in this neighborhood. If he sees, he's down here and he sees a car up on the hill, he's like, oh, I need to do something, I got to stay in my lane. That may be a reason that he would steer extra hard and not be able to borrow oncoming traffic or move into the oncoming traffic and try to keep it in his lane so he doesn't hit this guy coming head on. Which is why we have those critical speed yaw marks right there in the center of the double yellow line. And why he tried, you know, it looks like a driver would have tried to stay in that lane. And of course, that sets him up for going off road on the right side of the road here. And, you know, he's out of control at this point. Once he starts going into these yaw marks, at that point, you're losing control rapidly of the vehicle. You no longer get to a point where any kind of input you can do as a driver would affect the outcome of where the vehicle's going to.
And where did you determine that the bus was likely in the opposing lane of traffic to begin with? The opposite lane of traffic?
The school bus?
Yes.
Down here at the bottom, one of the things I noticed, I mentioned before about the overhang, it's got a 16-foot overhang from the back tires. As that bus is coming around here, his two back tires, the two dual axle tires, they're leaving distinctive yaw marks on the double yellow line, as well as the front tires just inside that as well. And so the back end started to slide out. As the back end slides out in a normal car, that's one thing, but when you have 16 feet of overhang, that means the back end of your bus is using up some of the oncoming traffic and is actually reaching out over into the oncoming lanes because the back end sticks out so much. So down at the bottom of the hill, you know, the bus is actually, because it's, you know, X number of feet long, and because there is that 16-foot overhang past the back tires, the back end of the bus is sticking out at oncoming traffic as it's sliding down there at the bottom of the hill.
All right. And that was because of the speed at that particular time?
Right, yes, sir. And, you know, until if you can't correct the speed, then, which shouldn't happen at the top of the hill, not at the bottom, you're just kind of stuck at that point.
All right. And this other vehicle that you talked about somewhere as the bus is climbing the hill, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Was there any evidence that it was in the bus's lane of travel?
No, because the bus, as it's coming up the hill, based on the frame count, how far from the point of the crash that was recorded by the video, using frame count, counting back, I can do timing and figure out where the bus is. It's in this general area when the bus and this white vehicle, and I think it's like a crossover or a small SUV, is my opinion, not a van, but it could be, it just doesn't look like one. That appears to be over here. The reason I say it can't be because we still got tire marks from the left side of the bus that are still on the double yellow line, which means if the white car is on the wrong side of the road, we would have had a head-on collision and not a single vehicle collision.
Okay.
Because there's no head-on collision, because there's no paint transfer, that tells me the white car has to be at least far enough over to the edge of the road to not make contact with the bus.
Even though the bus was partially in its lane?
At this point, at the bottom is where it'd be swinging out. At this point, it's starting to come back to where the back end will start to come off of the oncoming traffic.
All right.
But it'd be partially in it still.
And were you able in your investigation to determine the assigned route that Mr. Walker had for the Woodmore Elementary?
Yes, sir.
All right. And if we could, how many particular routes would he have on a daily basis?
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay testimony.
Would you approach the bench, please?
Were you able to attend the, you mentioned earlier about the post-crash inspection?
Yes, sir.
Did you attend that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I think the actual lead person for that was Trooper Klepper with...
Yes, sir. I believe Trooper Klepper with Tennessee Highway Patrol, he's one of their main commercial vehicle inspection folks.
All right.
Him and several others.
And did that investigation or that post-crash inspection figure into your overall investigation?
Of course, yeah.
All right.
Everything figures into it. Yes, sir.
All right. And I think at some point in the video, you've reviewed the videos. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And at one stop point, Mr. Walker's appears to be on a telephone.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. One moment, Your Honor. You may ask.
Cross-examination.
Your Honor, if I may just have a minute to gather at some of those photographs. Thank you. Good afternoon, Officer Warren. You first arrived at the scene around, you said between 4:15 and 4:30 p.m., is that right?
That's my guess.
When you arrived, as previously was discussed, there were several first responders, EMS, and other fire trucks on the scene, correct?
That's correct.
And you testified that members of Hamilton County Sheriff's Department had come to provide lighting and other backup support, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, looking at the sign-in sheets, it looks like there were maybe 10 or more fire trucks out there on the scene. Is that right?
That's very possible, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ambulances were coming and going during the course of those afternoon hours into the evening, transporting children, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And patrol cars, ambulances, and other fire equipment were also parked in the roadway of Tally Road, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The scene out there was generally chaotic, right?
That's yes, ma'am. A mass casualty event, that's a good way to describe it.
You would agree with me, Officer Warren, that fire trucks and EMS can sometimes be destroyers of evidence at a scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And basically having other large vehicles in the roadway could obscure marks or even leave marks of their own.
Right. We didn't conduct a ton of we didn't do any of our scans, which created our scale diagram until after we got all the fire personnel off scene, sort of thing. So because it would be too crowded to be able to see everything, so we wanted to wait till the fire department was done extricating all the children, getting everybody out. Once they had all the children out, then the scene gets turned over to the police department, and at that point, we conduct our investigation more thoroughly and get vehicles, the fire trucks, non-essential vehicles off of our roadway and off our scene.
And so that's for the scans. The scans, it looks like you did those at nighttime with the big lights out there. But for your original assessment of those marks, we're talking about you being out there in the chaos of the scene.
That's correct.
Okay. And you indicated that upon arriving at the scene, you made an initial assessment, looking first at these marks.
That's correct.
Right here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? So you saw those marks in the roadway, right?
Yes, ma'am. I sure
And
did. Between some trucks, and I had some trucks moved that were not doing anything,
Okay.
so I could see them better and get measurements.
All right. And so based upon those marks in the roadway, you were able to make an instant determination that you had high speed involved.
Oh, we did. Yes, ma'am.
And you also saw that this was a rollover collision. So you could also decide instantly, because there was a rollover, that you had high speeds involved.
When I started looking at the totality of the evidence I was looking at, even just briefly, as someone that's done this for 20 years and worked on so many crashes and seen so many different crashes that happen all kinds of different ways, a trained, experienced traffic investigator can walk up to a scene and have a good idea of what's going on pretty quickly. And in this case, this is first year stuff. When we have critical speed yaw marks, rollovers with heavy vehicles on a low speed roadway, it's what we refer to as first year stuff the new guys can figure out.
So seeing what you describe as yaw marks in the roadway is enough for you to know right then?
Knowing that and getting the measurements of those, measuring that yaw mark.
Okay.
And I wanted to wait until I had the measurement first.
All right. So you began your accident reconstruction that evening, right?
Very simple stuff.
All right. And you said that you pulled up on your motorcycle and you were able to walk the roadway, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you described on direct examination that the bus entered a ditch.
On the
Is that right?
right side of the road. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
321 Valley Road, that area, that little ditch area.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 23.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the ditch area?
Yes, ma'am. You see the tire marks? This would be from the driver's, or from the passenger side of the bus. These dual marks from the dual tires, that would be from the driver's, or from the passenger side of the bus as it enters the ditch here. It's yawing over here, coming over. Those are the driver's side tire marks. As it comes over, weight transfer to the right side, the wide right side of the bus now has the weight transfer and can leave the marks. And now we've got weight transfer and tire mark transfer here on this side, where, obviously it didn't magically go from the road to here. It actually would have had to enter here, hit there, so it should have been in the ditch at that point, the right side of the bus.
I want to show you some additional photographs, please. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Just look at these 4 photographs for me, Officer Warren, and tell me if you can identify what road that is.
There. That's probably further back on Tally, like towards Midville or something like that. And Rogers.
Well, let's talk about that.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm just guessing because I didn't take those photographs, so I don't know.
Do you recognize this red house there?
Not immediately, no, ma'am.
You don't recognize that as the house where there was a tree in front of it? And the bus ended up?
Is that a sunset then? Okay, it just looks different from this perspective.
You can finish looking at the remainder of those photographs.
And I apologize, Ms. Dunn, I did not bring my reading glasses. I brought them with me, but I left them in the motorcycle.
If I had some, I'd give them to you. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at here, but I'm sure you'll explain.
Well, get you some additional photographs that lead up to it.
Okay, that'd be great.
May I approach again here? You would take a look at those photographs and see if that helps orient you better.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, 'cause this gives me a starting point to work with.
And I apologize for making that confusing.
Right in the middle. So that'd be somewhere in there, and I'd have to look at my original notes to see what I actually did, because I did this usually on my phone using the calculator just to see what I was looking at.
So you don't know if you used 50 or 70?
I'm sure I used both.
Okay.
Or used a range.
Yeah.
Just to get a ballpark.
All right, so like we said, the two numbers that we're looking to be accurate are your radius measurement and your drag factor. Okay. So you and the traffic division officers went out to the scene 2 days later on November 23rd of 2016, right?
Yes, sir.
And the purpose of that was for you guys to perform drag sled testing, is that right?
Just to repeat what we had done the night before, we just want to make sure we got everything correct.
Okay. And so in order to do that drag sled testing, what you did was you guys closed off Tally Road on both ends so that you wouldn't have vehicles coming by as you were trying to do stuff.
Right.
Okay. And drag sled testing, what you do with drag sled testing is that you take a tire or a portion of a tire, right? And you fill it with concrete.
Yeah, that's what some of them are, just now.
How did you do it?
Ours is actually used an I-beam, an iron I-beam. It has a specific weight. Again, like I said, the drag factor, we want to know the relationship of the roadway, the friction of the roadway in relation to gravity. So basically, a drag sled will weigh, let's say, 30 pounds. If it takes 30 pounds of force to pull it along that roadway, then that gives us a ratio of 1 to 1. So that gives us a drag factor of 1/0. You don't see that on public streets. Now, on a drag strip where I used to do some drag racing, you'll see stupid high drag factors like a 2/0 because the drag strip is so sticky. So the way these 1,000, 2,000 horsepower cars can launch without spinning their wheels too bad. On normal surface streets, you don't see those kind of drag factors. Generally, if you want to pull a 30-pound weight, it takes about 15 pounds of force to pull it, which gives you a drag factor of 5. Or it takes 20 pounds of force to pull, it'll give you a drag factor, or a factor of like 0.6, so on and so forth. So you got the range, the ratio. And that's what we're looking for to determine is what that drag factor would be for that particular roadway.
Okay, and so what you did was you took a tire or a portion of tire that in your case had a weighted I-beam in there, right? And you dragged that across the surface of the roadway to come up with your coefficient of friction.
That is exactly right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And as a general rule, the higher the coefficient of friction, the higher the speed you're going to get in your
On a
calculation?
critical speed calculation, that is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Officer Warren, where did you learn to do drag sled testing?
Back in 1998, doing it by hand. And, before we had used a lot of computers and drag sled, BC performance computers, that sort of thing, we did it by hand. You want to pull it through the center mass of the actual drag sled, but if you lift on it, you're taking weight away from it, so you're introducing basically a lighter, you're making the sled lighter, which will give you a lower drag factor. And you don't want to pull it downwards, which will essentially make it heavy. You want to pull it directly through the center mass with the weight of it. So you're pulling it level, so the only thing interacting with is with gravity, interacting and not plus gravity plus you pulling it downwards, and therefore introduce a higher drag factor. You don't want to do that.
Okay.
So you want to make sure you pull it straight through the center mass of the drag sled.
You testified during my voir dire about the number of classes you've taken on accident reconstruction,
Yes,
right? You've run the gamut from what you testified previously, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You testified that you had classes with IPTM, right? Okay. You've also heard of the Northwestern University Center for Public Safety, right?
Sure.
They're the gold standard.
Yeah, IPTM will argue with that.
Okay. Well, IPTM is designed for police officers. It's a police training unit, right?
Right.
Northwestern University Center for Public Safety is an gives accident reconstruction classes for engineers and other and police officers.
Police officers attend both, and engineers attend both. And I'm familiar with some of Northwestern's stuff because I want to know as much as I can about it. You know, that's what you do. You want to keep learning. But yes, ma'am. You will find that generally engineers will go towards the Northwestern school. They work it from an engineering standpoint when they start looking at a lot of their formulas, how they build their formulas, how they derivate their formulas and derivate those numbers. IPTM tries to keep it a little simpler because simple works. A lot of these physics that we're dealing with are very simple physics. You have to understand, I'm not a math genius. I mean, I'm like most people. I had Algebra 1 in 9th grade, and I took it again in 10th grade because I didn't get it right in 9th grade. So, I mean, I'm not a math genius, but you know, when you understand the basics of the physics, they're generally very simple. The basics of the math are simple, and so IPTM does a good job of keeping something simple from being stupid complicated. You know, if you want complicated, you take Northwestern. If you want it simple, and because it is these are simple concepts. IPTM stuff with the simple concepts, which you know they obviously will get up there with the numbers, but I like their methodology because these are basic concepts.
Okay. So, just to be clear, though, Northwestern University Center for Public Safety, that's a recognized center. They have and we're going to talk about IPTM.
Okay.
They have publications coming out of Northwestern University that are recognized in the field of accident reconstruction as authorities, correct?
They do put up publications, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you familiar with a publication called Traffic Crash Reconstruction by Lynn Fricke?
Yep. I don't know if I can say that I've read it recently, but I am familiar with him and his concepts.
Okay, and that's out of the Northwestern University Center for Public Safety. That publication is 2010. Does that look right to you?
That edition is 2010. I think his book was written much earlier. He's been around for a long time.
Do all of those photographs make sense to you then?
Yeah, a little bit. Yes, ma'am. I realize where we're at.
Okay, where are those photographs at?
This is starting off at Sunset Avenue, looking at Tally. In our particular crash, the bus would have been going from the left to the right in that view.
Okay.
And the next 2 or 3 are about the same. And
All right.
then it starts looking towards the top of the hill.
All right, so we'll just do this sequentially then, okay? So, took out the first couple. Do you know what intersection that is?
Right, yes, ma'am. That would be Sunset and Tally.
Okay, and from this vantage point, then, looking to the right is the direction the bus would have been going past someone that had been standing there.
The bus would have, if somebody was standing there, the bus would have passed from the left side to the right side.
Correct, okay. Well, I'm sorry, it took me a minute. I'll show you this photograph. Sorry. Okay. And that's looking further up the hill, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Up Tally Road. And this would have been the edge of the roadway where bus 366 left the roadway. Is that right?
Where would have been the edge?
In this area.
Yeah, just off that picture. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll show you another photograph. Okay. Is that a more complete picture?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so what we're looking at is Tally Road, and up here, that's where the bus ended up in that yard. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And so the ditch you're talking about is over here.
Yes, ma'am. The depth of the ditch is here, but going off the road right in here.
Okay. Is that a closer shot?
Yes, ma'am.
And then here, That's a more ground level view of that side of the roadway where the bus left the road, correct? Okay, so we can see here, here's our driveway up here where we have marks going over the driveway, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right here, the road and that grass, that's level ground,
Pretty
right?
much, yes, ma'am.
And in fact, if you look at the next picture here, that's level pretty much until you get up to that driveway, right?
Right, yes, ma'am.
And so when we talk about the bus could not have gone off into this ditch and stayed in that course because it would have...
Off-road.
Okay, well, if you let me finish, please.
Okay, go ahead.
It could not have gone into that ditch because if it had gone into the ditch, it would have gone through that shrubbery, right?
It didn't go as far into the ditch, no, ma'am.
Okay. What it did was it went off the side of the roadway
Yes, ma'am.
where the road is level. Right there, right?
Okay, yes, ma'am. Off into the grass there.
I'll have these
Any pictures you have?
6 photographs, Your Honor.
That would be 45 through 50.
If we could identify the when they're taken for the benefit of the jury.
I can call a witness about that later, if that would be the state's
As
preference.
part of the agreement, they come in and just, if council could identify when they were taken.
Certainly. I'll have testimony
If
about
that
that.
can be done by agreement, or is
Yes,
that-
by agreement, it's fine.
can you do that by agreement, or do you want to talk to Mr. Kingston about it?
Oh, just tell her that. All right.
Photographs were taken on February 22nd of 2018, last week.
And that's agreed to then.
Yes.
And so I will mark these next.
Let those be marked exhibit 45 through 50 by, without objection, with the understanding that they were taken on February 22nd, 2018.
I'm going to go back again to exhibit number 23 that was put in by the state. Again, these are photographs that were taken 2 days later, right?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
The roadway looks pretty much the same on February 22nd of 2018 as it did on November 23 of 2016, right?
Right.
Flat roadway edge there
Right.
where the
Yes,
bus went off. Now, you were speaking earlier about beginning your measurements
Yes, ma'am.
out here at the scene. The first set of measurements you said you did were for these marks in this area. Is that accurate?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you gave a calculation earlier, and you did it kind of fast.
Okay.
So I want to make
I'll slow
sure.
down for you.
I want to make sure I understand. Some of the important numbers that go into this calculation are the radius that you described, right? One of the other very important numbers that go into this calculation is something called drag factor,
That's
right?
correct, yes, ma'am.
And you've described all that for the jury already.
Yes, ma'am.
If any one of these two numbers is incorrect, that affects the ultimate result that you get.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you testified on direct examination that you actually had your tape and your measuring tools out there, and you measured the radius of that mark that evening, right?
That's correct.
Then when we talk about drag factor, you testified on direct that you were guessing.
Well, there's a range that you use, that I use. Also, that night, I believe it was Investigator Cowan and Investigator Cabot also conducted drag sled pulls to get a drag factor, to get roadway factors that night. So I had both that and then just a ballpark range to give me an idea of what I'm looking at. And that, just and that right there, knew we were looking at speeds well above the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Okay. But if the drag sled testing was incorrect, that would affect your conclusion,
It can
right?
affect the numbers, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what exact measurement tool where you said that there are known ranges?
Roadway drag factor ranges that we have used, that we've actually physically tested. Different surfaces will yield different friction values. On the interstate, where the traffic engineers use concrete, that concrete has a higher aggregate in it, which makes the roadway stickier. And concrete, as a general rule, will run a drag factor from about 6.5 to 8.5, 0.85 to 0.65. As a general rule, we obviously want to test them to make sure. Asphalt, which is commonly used on their surface streets, and like here on Tally Road, generally has a lower drag factor, and it can be as low as 5.0 to about 6.5 to 7 to 8. So what I did, just literally with my phone using a calculator, because the formula is pretty straightforward, I just plugged in a range of numbers on the drag factor, using drag factor, a range of numbers that I've used in the past for asphalt, or I've discovered in the past through actual physical testing.
I'm going to show you from Mr. Fricke's publication here. Here we're talking about the sliding test tire. This is the same as a drag sled, right?
Right, yes.
And here, Fricke's talking about there are different methods that can be used to devise a test by dragging a test tire, also known as a drag sled.
Right.
Let's look down here. Read along with me. Sliding a test tire is not recommended as a method to determine friction coefficients. It is recommended that you do not use this method to determine friction coefficients. Do you see that?
Right.
Okay, and you said earlier you had read this publication at some point in time, correct?
I absolutely disagree. It is a standard that we have used for years and years. I have personally tested it alongside using the performance computers such as the VC2000, VC4000 performance computers, and found out that when you have a calibrated drag slip, you're pretty daggone close. You're actually very close, and like I said, everybody's entitled to an opinion. I've been doing this for a number of years, and I've been satisfied with the results I've gotten from the drag sled. They're very comparable to performance computer measurements that I've gotten, and which do, you're using the vehicle and you do obtain the heat that he refers to. Mm-hmm. I totally get where he's going with it, but for the purposes of calculating roadway friction, the drag sled still works.
Okay.
And like I said, Fricke's entitled to his opinion.
You're also familiar with the Society of Automotive Engineers?
I am.
Okay, SAE is what they're called. SAE is another recognized standard among traffic accident reconstructionists, correct?
I've actually contributed to an SAE paper with Sergeant Mark Kinsey, so I'm familiar with them.
Okay. And SAE puts out some of the biggest and most utilized publications for traffic accident reconstructions.
They do periodic stuff.
Going to show you a paper from 2006 called Comparison of Drag Sled and Skidding Vehicle Drag Factors on Dry Roadways. It's from the SAE Technical Paper Series.
Right.
Published in 2006. Do you see that?
Right.
Okay. I'm going to show you just the abstract. According to this paper from SAE, lightweight drag sleds have long been used by crash investigators to determine drag factor at a crash scene. Despite this long history, no published work has ever shown a correlation between drag sled results and the skidding performance of vehicles on multiple uncalibrated surfaces. Indeed, some researchers have noted that the testing appeared to show a poor correlation between the two. It has become clear in recent years that the interaction between braking or skidding tires and the pavement does not fit the simple weight and speed independent friction model that has been assumed, leaving the accuracy of drag sleds in doubt.
Okay.
Okay? You see that? Going down further, according to this paper that was published by, looks like 6 different gentlemen, drag sleds tended to read higher than even the peak value generated with skidding cars. There's no relationship between individual drag sled results and skidding vehicle results could be identified, which applied across multiple surfaces. Do you see that? What was noted here in this abstract was that drag sleds tended to read higher than even the peak value. Did you see that?
I saw that.
So using a drag sled could create results for your finding of a coefficient of friction
Right.
that is higher than the peak value, than the highest value that it should be.
Right. What the, you might have to explain some of that and some of the theory behind the study. Drag sleds are...
I actually
Okay.
would like to stick with my questions, please, sir.
Judge, you can explain it.
I think I'll let him explain it. I'll sustain it.
Go ahead, Mr. Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Drag sled, and the reason for this study is because there's no secret in the Reconstruction world that people have improperly pulled drag sleds, have been taught improperly how to pull them. Either law enforcement officers or other people that are in the like engineers that want to break into the crash reconstruction field and trying their hand at crash investigation. There's no secret that you have to do the pulls correctly. When you are doing the pulls incorrectly, you can generate higher roadway factor surfaces. When you build a drag sled incorrectly or have the center mass improperly located, you can have incorrect readings. It comes down to the real simple thing with a drag sled is it's an object that you pull that generates that helps us determine the friction value. If the sled is built correctly, if the center mass, the bolt, the high bolt that you use to pull it with is located correctly at the center of the mass of the actual sled itself, and the pull is centered through the actual sled itself, because I rely on my own test. I do a lot. I read a lot of these things, and I've seen these reports. I'm a member of the International Crash Reconstruction Association. I think I do remember that report hitting the scene 10 years ago or so, and everybody on the internet blowing up on this side. It comes down to when I actually do my own testing, and I actually do independent, when I test my drag sled, and then I conduct drag sled tests with a performance computer, which is the preferred way, and I agree with that. The drag sled is the preferred way. I've never seen the performance computer is the preferred method. The drag sled still works and is very close to the performance computer. The problem I run into, and the problem I run into in the real world, a lot of times when we create these studies and these things and we have our ideas of what a crash scene should look like, not every crash occurs in a parking lot where we have room to do things. Not every crash occurs on the interstate where we have a long way to do things. Sometimes crashes, interstate speeds are hit in neighborhood roadways. And when that happens, you don't have the room to exactly emulate the acting of the tire forces by going the same speeds that the driver was going, because I don't want to crash my patrol car. Sorry to get mad at you for that. So in lieu of doing a performance computer, I would go to the drag sled. And because I've tested it side by side myself using the performance computer and the drag sled, and I found that the comparisons were very, very close. I've been very comfortable using the drag sled especially in a situation like on Tally Road, we're just too narrow to do the performance computer test. So, I mean, I understand the studies are out there. I understand their concerns. A lot of their concerns are about misuse of the drag sled, but yeah, in an ideal world, I would like to use the performance computer to get my roadway friction. In an ideal world, I'd like to hook up a weight to that school bus and actually slide it across the roadway. I just don't have the means to do that. The performance computer would be my next best goal bet, just because of the nature of the roadway, I couldn't use it, so I'm left with the drag sled that I've been happy with in my side-by-side testing, and found out that the results are very comparable, and been very happy with my results with the drag sled. The issue, and I may let you have the floor again, but the issue
Thank you.
with yeah, I'll let you explain or ask away. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll apologize.
Go ahead.
All right. So just so we're clear, what you're saying is the preferred method is this performance computer, right? But you determined that it would be unsafe in this particular case to use the performance computer because you would have to exceed 30 miles an hour to conduct your test. Okay. Now, as I understand it, you're also saying that historically you have done drag sled testing and then you've done computer performance testing, and you find that your drag sled testing matches the computer performance.
I did those side by side on several occasions.
But not in this case, right?
No, because I didn't want to crash. The last guy that was going that fast ended up in a tree.
You didn't do the comparison testing in this case. So really, you just have your drag sled test results
That's
here.
all I can rely on from that video.
And you cannot perform an independent and, as you put it, preferred test that would justify your drag sled results.
Right.
Okay.
There are two variables on this formula that are critical. Obviously, number one is the drag factor, the roadway friction. That one's critical, which is why I produced a range of drag factors and a range of results for the drag factors. The more extreme critical factor in this formula is the actual measurement. And that measurement is off. That's when you can really jack up your numbers. The roadway factor friction, we adjusted it, we adjusted ranges from 80%, 90%, 100%. And that gave us a range of speed, and I think we wouldn't account for any kind of variations that the drag factor would produce from the performance computer.
Now, you mentioned you adjusted your drag factor by 90 and 80%, and that was to account for the commercial tires, right?
That's correct. But it also, because it's such a big adjustment, what that affects is the actual drag factor. The drag factor ends up being in a large range. So.
Okay. And so, just so we're clear, you would agree with me that bus tires are basically the same tires that are used on tractor trailers, right?
Similar.
Okay.
I think they actually have different compounds for passenger buses than they do for commercial trucks. So there's the passenger bus tire is a little bit softer compound than what you would find on a freight truck, but it's still a harder compound than what you would find in a passenger vehicle, car. So this is right. It's kind of probably in the middle on that compound, the stickiness of that compound.
Well, but in both cases, whether we're talking about a bus or a tractor trailer, the tire is made of a much harder rubber than we see on passenger vehicles, right? And the reason for this, I think you mentioned it earlier, it's pretty simple. Tractor trailers get a lot more mileage than a passenger car. And so they give up a little bit in stopping power and grip in order to be more durable, right? And because, otherwise those companies would be changing tires all the time, right? So you decided you'd show in your calculation adjusted drag factors of 100%, 90%, and 80%, right? Now, just to be clear, the drag sled that you used, was it a tractor trailer tire?
It is a 20-year-old tire that is a piece of tire from a pickup truck, I believe.
Okay.
So a passenger tire, but I'll be honest, I don't know what compound that is.
Okay. So the drag sled that was utilized in this case did not have a tire that would be consistent with the type of tire that was found on the 2008 Thomas-built school bus that Mr. Walker was driving.
It's close. It's very close. And like I said, when I did my side-by-side comparisons, we're doing very close numbers.
You said earlier that you'd received training from IPTM, which is the Institute of Police Technology and Management, correct? Okay. And so you're familiar with David Brill, his commercial motor vehicle crash investigation publications.
I am.
You're aware that he's published truck tire friction values that you can use, right? And those are truck tire friction values as opposed to passenger cars.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
And a pickup truck is a passenger vehicle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you agree with me that Mr. Brill has indicated that the appropriate percentage or the appropriate drag factor that should be used would be 70 to 77%?
Yes, ma'am. He's referring to the tractor trailer on braking. What he's trying to do with that, and he is correct in doing so, he's accounting for a braking vehicle. I'm not dealing with a braking vehicle, I'm dealing with a sliding vehicle. So the actual mechanical brakes of a commercial vehicle, which are different than a passenger vehicle's commercial brake or passenger vehicle's brakes, because there's a mechanical difference between tractor trailer brakes and passenger vehicle brakes. When you're doing the braking test, then you are going to be lower. You're going to be dealing with, the 70-75% of the roadway factor for braking, because there's a mechanical interaction where the truck brake doesn't have the same efficiency that an automobile's brake has, and so using those lower ranges, he uses that for braking. Now, when you're still talking about sliding, the only thing you're looking at is the commercial vehicle tire itself. You're not having to worry about the mechanical action of the brakes. And so now you're not having to do 70-75% like you would in a braking situation. Because we're not dealing with a braking school bus, we're dealing with a sliding school bus. All I want to look at is the actual tire compound.
We mentioned earlier you were familiar with the traffic accident reconstruction by Lynn Fricke out of Northwestern University, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to show you here. Sorry, it's a little awkward on this page here. This is tractor trailer friction ranges, coefficients of friction for various roadway surfaces, and we see there asphalt, traveled asphalt, for a vehicle that you believe to be going more than 30 miles per hour. Mm-hmm. You're looking at 55 to 70 there.
Okay.
Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then as you go down a little bit further, to get a friction range for a tractor trailer, you are to apply these percentages to the range of a passenger car tire. So the range you should be looking at, it says here, is the lower end of the range would be 0.39, and the upper end of the range would be 0.54. Do you see that?
Again, this chart is referencing braking, not the sideways sliding action.
Do you have some other publication that would differentiate between those two?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, if you go back to David Brill's book, David Brill referenced that. I don't have the book in front of me, the complete book in front of me, but he referenced that where he talks about the tire compounds. And, there's a difference between the action of sliding to a stop and you have the mechanical inefficiency or not as efficient heavy truck brakes versus the more efficient passenger car brakes. And he references that and talks about that. And, I've discussed with him in person, or actually by phone, some of this stuff. He and I worked a case together. David Brill and I worked a case together a number of years ago out in Memphis. And we went into a lot of discussion about a lot of that stuff. I was able to pick his brain because I know him. He actually instructed me back in '98. And again, I had the opportunity to work the case with him in early 2000s and mid 2000s. Guy's a wizard, he's a smart guy. But he and I had discussions and understood where he was getting some of his theory from, and helped me better understand, when a book hits, text hits, you've got the text or the contents of the book. It's great to be able to talk to the guy that actually wrote the book. And like I said, David and I were able to have a number of conversations about some of this stuff that can cause confusion or cause chaos in the courtroom, that sort of thing. And it still comes down to, a lot of this stuff is really simple. And if I were to rely just on tire marks, that'd be one thing, but I didn't get to mention at all about, when I looked at another way to get speed from this crash.
Okay. But when it came to placing Mr. Walker in handcuffs on November 21, 2016, you were looking at tire marks, right?
That's correct, and I was pretty daggone sure that I was accurate. And the rest of you stand here, they tell you I was accurate.
Because even though that there is published literature saying that drag sleds are not an appropriate method, your method of doing drag sleds is appropriate. Okay. I want to move on then to talk about yaw marks next. I'm going to show you what's been marked here as exhibit number 20. I'm sorry, I'm doing that upside down. Exhibit number 20. There we go. So just to orient everyone again, down here, this is the intersection of Sunset Road, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this is Tally Road, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And here we have some marks on the double yellow line, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And those are marks that you have referred to as yaw marks, correct?
I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when a vehicle goes into a yaw, it's essentially rotating on its vertical axis, right?
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
And so it starts rotating as it goes into what's called the yaw, correct? And it leaves its original path of travel to rotate, right?
That's a great way of saying it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to show you a diagram to maybe help describe this. Again, this is from the Northwestern University Center for Public Safety Traffic Collision Investigation, and you acknowledge that although Northwestern is not your preferred.
They're very good.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this here is a diagram of a yaw, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
That's correct.
Okay. So looking at this diagram, a car will begin the process of a yaw with one set of tires leaving a mark, right?
Typically, you're going to find you start with the front leading tire. So if it's yawing to the left, the front right tire will start with the first mark. If it's yawing to the right, the front left tire will leave the first mark.
Okay.
And it's closely followed by the left rear tire, and then eventually by the right front tire that's yawing to the right.
Okay.
So, but yes.
And so in our diagram that we have here, this is doing exactly what you described. This vehicle is yawing to the left, and therefore it's leaving a mark with its right front tire, correct?
That's correct.
And then there will be outside tire marks that become more prominent as it continues to spin on its vertical axis, right? And it will do something called crossover, right? Okay. So you're really getting, as you can see from this diagram, multiple sets of tire marks, but they start with the front tire, the leading front tire, right? Going back to this photograph, the mark we have here is a rear passenger tire, correct?
No, not a passenger, but not, it's from the bus, not a passenger vehicle tire.
I'm sorry.
It would be on the driver's, the one you're looking at here would be from the driver's side of the bus.
I'm sorry. I made a mistake there. These are from the rear driver's side.
Probably the rear and the front. What's hard to see is if there are certain places where you can see it better. There are actually 3 tire marks because it's a dual axle, on the back. So you're actually going to have 2 from the back tire and 1 from the front. There are places where you actually see 3 of them together. At some point you see the one looks like it might be on top of another. It's hard to see, and at some points you can't see, like maybe the inside of the rear tire, just because of weight transfer and loading.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure. One of them was likely going to be the front tire, one was going to be the rear tire, and I'd have to get out my CAD program and place the vehicle on there, because we had already done this, just to refresh my memory on which one's which.
Well, just to be clear, on this bus, on the front of the bus, there's single tires, right?
That's correct.
On the rear of the bus, you got
Dual tires.
Dual tires.
Yes, ma'am.
So the mark that we're looking at here, in exhibit number 20, looks like dual tires.
Could be, or it could be the front tire and one of the rear tires. Because I don't have when we set up the CAD software, we actually are able to place the vehicle on the tires and walk it through the yawing action. That helps us better understand, also helps us identify which tire marks are created by which tire. Looking at the photograph here in the courtroom today, I'm just not positive which tire created which tire mark right here without having that scale diagram that I did on the computer to place that. What I wanted to bring to the courtroom was basically my center mass movement, which was with those radius of being my center mass movement, which would give me my critical speed, the final analysis. I didn't know I had to build the whole thing from the beginning. I guess I should have prepared for that. But it could be from the front tire, it could be from the rear tire, it could be from the front and the rear tire. I'm not 100% sure without having it all there.
Looking at your initial report, there's no crossover here,
That's
is there?
correct. Yeah, and on Ricky's book, we saw the diagram where it does show crossover. That's our clue that the vehicle is totally rotating around the center mass axis and indeed in a yaw. What I'm lacking is crossover because the roadway is not long enough. It's a narrow 2-lane road and curves off to the right. And because of that, and because we go off the roadside of the right and everything else, we're not going to get the vehicle didn't have enough roadway or enough room to obtain crossover. So we did not achieve crossover. We didn't see the crossover where basically where the front and the back passes the back. I'm trying to keep it simple. And we did not get to that on the roadway there because I ran out of road, I guess.
Well, except that what could have happened, this bus was in a true yaw, is that it would have left those tire marks and it would have kept on going this way, right? It would have kept on spinning just like it did in this picture.
Until it hits the right side of the road, that elevated driveway, and that changes things there. Otherwise, it would have kept on spinning and gone up to the right.
In a true yaw, this bus would have spun, and once you start that yaw, you can't stop it.
Right. Unless it's acted upon by another outside force. And in this case, we had that elevated driveway on the right side of the house.
Well, but looking here at your scale diagram, I'm going to show you what's marked as exhibit number 19.
Right.
Okay? This is the tire mark that we were just looking at, right in here, right?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The bus didn't continue to spin because Mr. Walker was able to steer the bus over to the right. and then pull back to the left, correct? Look, we can follow the tire marks.
Right.
It was going right, and then
Negotiating a right-hand curve, yes, ma'am.
it was going right, and then the bus was steered left, and you can see the tire marks there where it's steered left.
Okay, well, yeah, that's where you see is he would have continued that long circle and gone off up into the yard 321 Tally Road. However, the outside forest center in this case was the elevated driveway, and that pushes everything back to the other side of the roadway. Don't know how much of it would have been steering input as much of it is just the physics of hitting the elevated driveway.
Well, let's talk about it. So again here, exhibit number 20, tire marks that are either front or rear, you're not really sure,
Right.
coming this way.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 23.
Yes, ma'am.
These are the tire marks on the driveway that you're talking about.
Yes, ma'am. And then you see up there at the beginning is hitting that impact of that elevated driveway, darkens right there. And then as the impact is lessened, the weight transfer comes up, stuff shifting around, the vehicle's being rotated.
These tire marks from the passenger side of the bus, aren't they?
Yes, ma'am.
They're not from.
No, from those tire marks are from, yeah, the passenger side.
Okay. So back here we have driver's side marks, and here we have passenger side marks.
Yes, ma'am.
It is not that. Excuse me. The bus was in a yaw and hit the driveway and suddenly spun back the other way. We're talking about tires on two different sides of the bus in these photographs, right?
Right, yes, ma'am.
That would be consistent with a steering input of the bus trying to get back onto the
One thing that
roadway.
happens when you can, in a yaw, a true yaw, you can't do nothing until the vehicle slows down enough, or in this case, it hits objects such as the elevated driveway, and then that's got speed, and then, steering of the inputs can come into play at that point, if that's what you're asking. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So neither the mark and across the road onto the double yellow line, those are not true yaw marks because the bus didn't keep going in a yaw, correct?
And then go, yes, ma'am. And it's the same thing as happening, the vehicles, the tires are slipping sideways. What has not happened yet, because he needed more time for this to occur, is crossover. So we've not got to the full yaw rate, the full yaw action, I guess you'd say. But those beginning of what we call bending yaw marks, and they're very much have a radius where we can examine the center mass movement in a curve, in a radius, and of the bus, and that's exactly what we did.
In a true yaw, a driver loses complete control. And
Until you hit something else, or in this case.
in this case, the driver was able to maintain control and attempt to steer back onto the roadway, correct?
Yes, ma'am. He was able to strike the elevated driveway, which reduced speed. Once you reduce speed, you can start to regain control and eventually you can start affecting the steering again.
Would you agree with me, Officer Warren, that technically this mark in the roadway down here, back here in exhibit number 20, could be called a side slip mark?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And a side slip mark can occur in vehicles that are not speeding, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a yaw mark, a side slip mark, all these can happen when the vehicle's not speeding. Speed is, you can enter into a yaw, a critical speed yaw. You can enter into a side slip at a speed lower than what it would take to negotiate a curve safely. Say I can safely negotiate a curve at 30 miles an hour. I can still get to a critical speed yaw at 20 miles an hour by inducing too much steering and trying to force the vehicle into a tighter path and induce a yaw. And then once there's too much there's not enough roadway friction to hold the front steering tires, and I can induce it to go that way. So, yes, I'm sorry.
So someone could leave a side slip mark or a yaw mark because they were oversteering and not speeding.
Yes, ma'am.
Another fact that you placed significance on was the fact that there was a rollover in this case, right?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you would agree with me, Officer Warren, that rollovers can occur at low speed, can't they?
Yes, ma'am.
And it just really depends on the center of mass, right?
The height of the center of mass, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so an unloaded bus has a specific height of center of mass, right? And then as you put students on the bus and load it up, the height of the center of mass increases.
That is exactly right.
Okay. And indeed, the higher the center of mass, the more likely it is for a rollover to occur, right?
At a particular radius and a particular speed, that is correct, yes, ma'am.
Sometimes it's what lay people call being top heavy.
That's correct.
In the case of bus 366, the center of mass increased with every child that got on the bus.
Right.
Okay.
These were elementary students and not the high school students, so they don't add as much
Fair enough.
when you look at the weight of the bus in total.
So once that bus was loaded, the center of mass went up, increasing the propensity for a rollover.
At a particular radius and a particular speed.
Okay. You talked on direct examination with Mr. Pinkston about the white bus, right?
Or the white van or the white vehicle.
It was described by Michelle Brogdon in her statement of November 21, 2016 as a bus, wasn't it?
I think so, that's what I heard, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you were testifying that you knew about this white bus that day, is that right?
Look, I've heard there was a white vehicle through Investigator Mike Russ when he and I interviewed one of the witnesses, and Mike Russ asked that particular witness if she had seen a white bus or white vehicle, and that's when I first heard of a white vehicle. I did not speak with Ms. Brogdon that day or any time, but I had heard it that day through Investigator Russ.
Okay. And so you had heard that there may have been a white bus that was traveling past bus 366 at some point in the area of Tally and Sunset?
Some point on Tally Road. That was what from one witness that stated that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you testified in the preliminary hearing of this matter, correct?
I did, yes.
Okay, and that was on a while ago. It was December 15 of 2016, right? There was no discussion at the preliminary hearing that you knew of a white bus, was there?
No, ma'am. And I had not yet seen or spent time on the video to see the white vehicle on the bus. There was, we had a number of witness statements that were received that day, and I didn't get to talk to any of the witnesses. I talked to maybe one or two witnesses myself personally, and I was present when Mike Russ was asking about the white van, and this witness was actually behind the school bus and said she never saw a white vehicle or white bus. And seeing as how there's no paint transfers or any other indication the vehicle was even remotely involved or on the same road, there's a white vehicle out there somewhere. Okay, I didn't see how that was relevant at all. No, I did not testify in December about reviewing anything about a white bus, because I think that was from one witness statement at the time.
Well, let's back up. You're saying that Investigator Mike Russ spoke with a witness who was driving behind bus 366?
Right. Yeah. Myself and Mike Russ interviewed. We did an on-camera interview with one of the witnesses. I set up a camera just to have an on-camera witness, and I specifically remember Mike Russ asking her about the white bus, and that was the first I'd heard of it, but I didn't hear anything more about it. I think, as I understood at that time, only one that just mentioned it. And then later on, when we were spending time with the video, analyzing the video, I noticed a couple of clips, or a couple of photo frame grabs, I guess you'd say, where you see a white vehicle to the right of the bus, or to the left of the bus, out this window. Which means there's another car on the roadway, which is not a surprise. We share the road with lots of people.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, have you read the witness statements as we sit here today?
I glanced at them. I don't remember reading all of them. I remember I read Ms. Brogdon's statement, and then I'm trying to remember her name. I didn't read all of the witness statements.
Okay. All right. So just so we're clear, Mike Russ spoke to the person who was driving behind bus 366, right?
Myself and Mike Russ did.
Okay. That's not Michelle Brogdon, is it?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That was another lady, and I apologize, but I don't remember her name.
Michelle Brogdon would have been the witness who actually identified the white bus and notified Chattanooga Police Department of that fact, right?
That's my understanding. Yes,
And neither you nor Mike Russ spoke to her at the scene, right?
I did not know him. I don't know if Mike may have. That may have been why he knew to ask the other lady about it.
And as I understand it, to you, the fact that there was potentially a white bus traveling the roadway coming towards bus 366 has absolutely no relevance to you?
No, it helps me understand it now. But it's just, it doesn't change anything from what I understand about the nature of the crash. When I reviewed video evidence, got speed from the video, when I got speed from the yaw marks and all these other things, I still have a bus that's speeding and out of control. And it just helps me understand, why he might have steered so hard to try and maintain his lane, because he saw this car coming. He wanted to try and stay on his side of the road when he could have borrowed from the other side at the speed he was going to negotiate that curve safely and get through the curve without, losing control. But he wasn't able to do that because of his excessive speed. So, I guess because he saw there's a white vehicle coming, he probably didn't want to hit the white vehicle head on, so that would explain why he steered so hard to try and stay on his side of the road instead of drifting into the oncoming traffic.
The lead investigator in this case, Adam Cavett, actually spoke with Michelle Brogdon on November 21 of 2017, right?
Okay.
Have you ever looked at the video of that conversation between Officer Cavett and Ms. Brogdon?
I don't think I have, no, ma'am.
Okay. So you don't know that what Ms. Brogdon stated then and has testified to today is that the white bus was doing something that she calls mountain driving?
Okay. I did hear that statement, but I didn't hear it from her.
Okay. And that Ms. Brogdon described this as the white bus coming into the other lane.
Judge, I'll object to that. That's not even close to what she testified to.
I'll let you cross-examine them on the things that
I think the exact words that she used was cutting off the lane. You didn't know that Ms. Brogdon said there was cutting off the lane.
I wasn't present for that. I don't think I reviewed the video or interview, so I didn't.
If you had reviewed the video of her interview or had spoken with her at the scene, or if anyone had spoken with her at the scene, that would have certainly been relevant to you in your analysis of this crash, wouldn't it?
It just helps me understand it. I've just spoken to the driver, too. The bus, from what I understand, I think Mike Russ, one of our traffic investigators, must have spoken with her because he had that information. So I couldn't tell you who spoke to her, who did not speak to her. So I don't know. You're asking me a question I just don't want to answer to.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Warren, you did the speed measurements with the yaw marks and then speed measurements by the video.
Yes, sir, I did that.
Were those similar? Were your results similar?
The results are very similar, yes, sir.
All right. With the range that you talked about, what was it, 46 to 52?
Right. When I did the speed analysis for the yaw marks, I'm looking at 46 to 51 mile an hour, some of that range, using the speed from the yaw marks, the critical speed marks. I also used the video that was on board the bus, looking out the side, and video is basically photographs at the time. So one of the things I want for a speed measurement would be time and distance. By time and distance, I can get velocity. I know that the bus passed certain landmarks that I could see on the video. On the video of the bus looking out to the side, I saw where it passed, like the sidewalk at 121 Tally Road, then past the intersection of Sunset Boulevard or Avenue, and then up to the point where it's coming to the driveway at the top of the hill. Basically, what I had was distance, and because it's on video, video's photographs at the time, I had time and distance. Doing the simple calculations of time and distance from the video, I was able to calculate that the bus was traveling about 50 miles an hour to 48 to 50 miles an hour from the two different videos that I looked at and actually did calculations from, which is consistent with our 46 to 51 mile an hour we're getting from the yaw mark measurements. So I found that the video evidence supported what I was finding from the yaw mark evidence. So,
Thank you.
Any recalls based upon the redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer Warren, you testified on direct. With respect to these videos, there are a couple of places where the videos skip, right? There are places where the video cuts out, right? There are places where seconds are lost from that video, right? And I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, there's gaps in what I had to work at in the seconds that did exist. Most of the video existed. There's a gap at the very end when the crash is occurring that I noticed was missing from one or two of the cameras. There may be other gaps I'm not aware of, but in that gap, I still have time that's going on, just no video input, no actual video is being stored in that time. The segments where I do have video, the segments are very clear from point A to point B. I've got consistent video and video frames that I can measure and count, and I've got my time. This is pre-crash. This is around Sunset Avenue at the bottom of the hill. And so that video is intact, and I'm able to measure that and get my time distance easily off of that. I know others have done the same thing as well, looking at it. But there was a gap at the end that was missing. There might have been some before I'm not aware of, but the segments I focused on were moments leading up to the crash.
Your testimony on direct is that not all the cameras ran continuously, right?
Right. I think it was and I have to remember the sequence. One of them ran continuously. I mean, we're talking once it starts the rollover process. The rollover process up into the point where it goes off into the side of the road, what I call the ditch, which is really the flat grassy area that you and I agree on, and then strikes the driveway on that side. The video is consistently running for all three cameras. Once it gets to that point, beyond that point starts the rollover process. At that point, that's when some of the cameras start losing their feed. I'm assuming it's going to be electrical connection from the camera going to the memory box, or whatever we call it, the recorder. As it's in the rollover process, those moments are gone, and then it picks back up again. It could be an electrical interference or something during the actual rollover process, during the crashing process, where those segments are missing. The segments I was concerned about, obviously, were while he's driving, especially down at the bottom of the hill, where I know he's starting to lose control, and I wanted to see if those, doing a speed analysis from the video, matched my measurements from the yaw marks, and they matched very closely. My video was 48 to 50 miles an hour, 51 miles an hour, and my yaw marks were 46 to 51 miles an hour, somewhere in that neighborhood. So they're right on top of each other, which is too fast for that roadway.
So you're talking about videos that are missing seconds and an accident that took place in a matter of seconds, right?
I don't know if it's missing seconds. It's missing seconds.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. I guess we want to excuse. Thank you.
Thank you.
members of the jury, everybody's worked hard all day. I think it's probably appropriate to take out a break at this point in time, let you go to the officers. Now, remember the instructions that I've always repeated. You're only going to try the case based on what you hear in this courtroom, so don't do any outside investigation, don't watch anything, view anything, visit any place, let anyone talk to you about it. We're going to let you go to the officers. We'll start in the morning. Now, let's do this in the morning. Of course, the officers will bring you in, and we'll start right at 9 o'clock. Everyone gets here a little early, maybe a little early, but we'll start no later than 9 o'clock. You may go with the officers.
All rise. May be seated.
Have 6 please. It seems like the appropriate time to take a break this time. Everybody's worked hard. So that everyone in the courtroom knows, as I told the jury, we'll start no later than 9 o'clock. If there are some witnesses here, need to be here about 8:45 or 8:30 to 8:45 in the morning so that we can start promptly. Thank you for folks in the courtroom for your being with us today and listening without any undue noise or anything like that. That's appropriate. I thank you for that. So we'll be adjourned until 9 o'clock in the morning.
Court's adjourned to 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Must clear the courtroom for security purposes at this time, please.